Okay, so we've had some great questions, and one that keeps coming up, and I get asked a lot in clinic, is belly fat. That dreaded stuff that seems to become more and more of an issue as we get older. Why do we have it? What can we do about it? Even slim people seem to have an issue with belly fat as they get older. So it probably boils down a lot to do with a hormone called leptin. And leptin is something that in millennia gone by was something that stopped us starving to death and probably stopped us getting overweight. It's kind of called the hunger hormone or the satiety hormone. So what leptin's supposed to do is kind of let you know when you've had enough to eat. But something has gone wrong in the last 50 to 100 years, and suddenly we seem to be having leptin resistance. And lots of people have heard of insulin resistance, but this is another hormone that we seem to be becoming a bit resistant to. And whenever you're resistant to something like leptin, it means that your brain just isn't quite getting those messages to tell you that actually you've had enough food. And one of the theories is that people who struggle with their weight or who are overweight or obese are not responding to the leptin that they have, or there may be that they're actually producing less leptin. And why is that happening? Well, there's lots of research going on at the minute to try and understand it. What we do think is there's probably a lot to do with ultra processed foods. Sometimes people get a little bit confused as to what that means. So for example, if you chop up a potato and turn it into some chips, that and you cook them at home, that is not an ultra processed food. An ultra processed food tends to be something that comes in a packet, and it would have ingredients in it that you wouldn't necessarily be able to find in the shelf in your pantry. So it often has lots of ingredients that have long names, and you wouldn't be able to knock that product up yourself. So that's what ultra processed food is. And we do think that it's probably related to ultra processed food. But we clearly live in an environment where there's lots of ultra processed food, convenience food, and we all have supermarkets where, you know, the middle aisles or most of the aisles are full of this food. And that's one of the reasons why we talk about trying to eat your way around the edge of the supermarket, because that tends to be more where you're having those natural fruit, vegetables, meat, and things that are all in their more natural form. So what can you do to try and counteract this leptin resistance? So some of the research would suggest that high intensity exercise seems to really give a bit of a reset. So that's your sort of really high intense, or sometimes called HIIT exercise. But what we also know is that all forms of exercise actually are really, really helpful with regards to leptin. So taking some more exercise is definitely going to help. And the other things that we know that seem to impact leptin are sleep, and most importantly, not having enough sleep. And there's quite a few studies out there that show people who are getting less than the optimum amount of sleep, shift workers, etc., also have issues with leptin. So trying to get a good 6 to 7 hours sleep minimum a night is a really good idea. And the other thing that seems to really impact leptin is fiber. So making sure you've got enough fiber in your diet, that seems to make such a big difference. And we're aiming for between 25 and 35 grams a day. And obviously it's ideal if you can take your fiber in from whole foods. So obviously vegetables are a great source, but also your pulses and nuts and other fibrous foods. But if you can't, and you just have to face reality that you just can't manage it, go and get yourself some psyllium husk or something like that to take on a regular basis, because quite frankly, it's better to have the fiber. The other thing that's really important with leptin is to actually have protein with every meal. So I think the message is definitely getting out there. People are understanding more and more that they need to have some more protein. But having protein with every meal is really important. So I think we need to think about that, particularly breakfast and lunch. Often people will skip have virtually no protein in those meals. The other thing I think is really interesting is that we know that menopause and the perimenopause, there is a connection with changes in leptin. The research industry and medical industry are trying really to understand exactly what that connection is. But we know that in the perimenopause and menopause, women start to deposit more fat into their abdomen. And look, I see this because I often send patients who are on my skin and body transformation off for a DEXA scan. And that lets me look at people's belly fat. And that's that deep fat around the organs and things that's quite unhealthy. And what's quite interesting is that even though some of the patients that I look after are actually considered to have a healthy body mass index or be within that healthy weight range, they actually have a lot of fat sitting in their tummy. And we know that that's what they call the dangerous fat and much more likely to lead to things like heart disease, etc. So there's definitely a connection between hormones in women reducing in that perimenopause, menopause, and these changes within leptin. So one of the things that obviously menopausal women will often do is take some hormones, some hormone replacement therapy, and we often see then reversal of some of those changes. So look, hopefully that helps. It's just a very, very brief reminder of things that you can do to work on that belly fat. So just to remind you, increase your fiber, have protein with every meal, have some exercise, and make sure you get 7 hours sleep every night. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare, or other professional advice. Information is provided for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you have any health concerns, always consult your doctor.